back to Controlled Chaos. I am Kay, I use they, them pronouns, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a book review on Love Theoretically by Hazelwood, her latest book. She has another one coming out later this year that is a YA title that I'll be also very excited to get. Hazelwood is one of my favorite romance authors right now, favorite contemporaries, just because I really like her writing style and I really like the emphasis on women in academia and in STEM. This one in particular is my favorite so far. It is currently her longest book at 183 pages, not 183 pages, at 383 pages, including the epilogue. The others get close, but that's also including the author's note as well. Now, in short, this book was amazing. That's all. That's the review. Thank you for coming. See you next week. But in all seriousness, this book is my favorite Hazelwood so far. And I was concerned with how some of the preemptive reviews, which, by the way, do not review a book before you read it. Do not star a book before you read it. And if you are the author of the book, do not review your own book. Do not. Do not do it. I know it's tempting. Do not do it. It's not your space. Reviews are for readers, not for authors. That said, I wouldn't have minded if this was like her other books at all. I haven't read the second book. I own it, but I haven't read it yet. But if it was like those, I wouldn't have minded. Sometimes I just want to know exactly what I am going in for, exactly what kind of book I'm going to be going in for. And if that was going to end up being Hazelwood, that's fine. I don't care. But this book is a Rivals to Lovers, and it focuses the spotlight on the politics of academia. And what it is like to live with diabetes, and be an adjunct professor and not have enough money, but also be a woman in STEM and in academia and as a researcher. And Elsie, our main character, also really struggles with people pleasing and needing to rewrite herself for every person that she meets so that she does not ever get to live as herself. That really hit home for me, and it just kind of came at the right time. This book was kind of like the stars aligned when I started reading this book. We have our two main characters, our main protagonist, Dr. Elsie Hanaway, a theoretical physicist, and then Jack Smith, who's an experimentalist. I don't know if he's a doctor. I assume that he's a doctor. I assume it's Dr. Jack Smith. I assume. But I didn't write it down because I couldn't remember, and for some reason I couldn't be bothered to go and figure it out, because you'll see why. You'll see why. I'm gonna have this review set up in two different portions. I'm going to have the first segment, which is going to be the unspoilered review, and then the second section is going to be the spoiler zone. Okay, I'm going to go further into the plot and then talk about the important things brought up in the plot. Dr. Jack Smith is kind of a plain dude. He's kind of plain. I feel like he has a three-point personality, but that's okay. That's okay. The man does the work, and he is, honestly, I love him. But Elsie's an adjunct physics professor, and she is interviewing for a position at MIT. She is very eager about getting this job because it would bring her medical aid, which she really needs for her diabetes. Elsie has always tried to blend in and make herself as small as possible, and trying to make her problems so small and so insignificant that a microscope wouldn't see them. And all's going well until Jack Smith steps into her life on the committee that she interviews for. It's a very cute Rivals to Lovers, he falls first romance. and it has fake dating. It has fake dating. It has, oh no, I guess I have to stay the night situations, and I very much enjoy it. I was really kind of happy with how unabashedly it went with the Omegaverse. Oh, blah, 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 Twilight. But specifically, Alice and Bella fan fiction Twilight. If you like that, I think you like the references in this. There is ace representation in the book, and we do get a cameo from 2 characters from one of Allie's other books. But in regards of content warnings, I would just say that there is some medical stuff with her insulin and not having ample access to her insulin. And she does have a couple of insulin-induced episodes where she needs aid from Jack. But other than that, it's just a lot of misogyny from older men in her workplace, in academia, which is to be expected with what the topic is, what some of the challenges is that she's supposed to face. Those are the content warnings that I can think of currently at this moment. All right, so I'm going to be getting into the spoiler part of the review. If you don't want major plot points given to you, I'm not going to talk about the end of the book, though. I'm not going to talk about the ending because I want you to be able to read up to that point for yourself. So if you don't want spoilers, go ahead and end now. I'll see you later. Elsie hates Dr. Jonathan Smith Turner. Hates him. She hates him. Hates his guts. Do you know why she hates him? Because, so there is the Scientific American Journal. It's the journal for her physics field. Well, Jonathan Smith Turner, he submitted a fake paper to be peer-reviewed and submitted to the journal when she was 12, and he was but a teenager himself. He was 17 years old. It ended up ruining her mentor's career and smearing the names of theorists everywhere, because the fact that it got into the peer-reviewed journal and it was obviously fake, that was kind of big in the scientific community at the time. And at this point, it has been long enough that still a lot of experimentalists do not take theorists seriously because of this paper that was submitted a long time ago. And so everybody assumes that he hates theorists as well because of this. So that happened when she was 12, and now she's an adult and she has a lot of bills to pay, and she is currently working multiple adjunct jobs which pay her nothing. It does not pay her nearly enough, so she ends up having a roommate that she lives with, Cece, and a hedgehog. She hates the hedgehog hates her. Whether this is just thought in her head or real, I'm not quite sure, but it's okay. Her field of interest in physics is specifically on two-dimensional crystals. I don't know about any of that to talk about that, but she is touted. She won an award about it when she was in grad school, based on her work in two-dimensional crystals, which is very prestigious, especially for a woman to earn that award. So she would have thought that she would have been able to get into any other research positions after winning that award and because of her work. But unfortunately, her mentor has said that she wasn't able to get that nobody was interested in her, that no theorists were interested in her or experimentalists. Nobody was. So she's a people pleaser and she's a compulsive liar. She's learned to analyze someone and shape herself to whatever they want her to be. It's really worked out in her favor because as a side gig, she works as a girlfriend for hire. So think Rent a Girlfriend, but in the US. So she is able to change her personality, bend towards what this person wants. Ideally, she goes in as with a goal, like, okay, so tonight I am the fake girlfriend of this guy who's going to a family function, and he needs to pretend like he's in a committed relationship. And she's like, okay, mom is the target, so and so's the target. I need to put on a show for mom, for sis, for whatever. And to be clear, this is just girlfriending. That is it, nothing else. Even though she has had men in the past be like, so like, what? I'm paying for a fake girlfriend? Do you like, are we gonna go, you know? She's like, no, nothing at all. None of that hanky-panky, nothing. She's had a dude offer to pay her $70 to go and have sex with him. Like, that's how desperate he was. So she gets into trouble when she is going on a date with her regular Greg Smith, the younger brother of Jack, who in his secret quiet moments Jack cannot stop thinking about her. She perceives that Jack hates her guts for whatever reason. And when she goes to these family gatherings with Greg, which, by the way, she's not supposed to do multiple dates with the same client, but she does anyway because she feels like she needs to protect Greg, that Greg is somebody worth her time and protection. And so she has interacted with Jack multiple times, and she thinks that Jack is out to get her and hates her guts. He is concerned, so he is obsessed over her, but he's concerned that she's playing his brother. Why? Because when a couple of times she has had insulin issues, she was getting low on insulin, and she passed out basically in Jack's arms twice. And so, the entire time she's like, no, don't tell anybody, don't tell Greg, don't tell him. And so he's like, that's weird that you don't want me to tell Greg, your boyfriend. But also, she had no idea about this retreat that Greg was supposed to go out to. So she had no idea. And Jack's like, that's weird. Why don't you know about your boyfriend's thing that he's supposed to go to that he's like terrified of doing? She's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know. So she's trying to juggle Jack, who, by the way, is Jonathan, which she found out at her interview because he's on her interview panel for the MIT job. So Jack's confronting her about his brother and trying to ace the interview. She's pulled into many directions. And worst of all, Jack can see right through her. So every single time she lies when they're getting closer because he is involved in her interview process. So she's had to go and see him multiple days in a row because that's how academic interviews work. So it's a days-long process. It started with a dinner, and then like she has to go and do private meetings with multiple professors at MIT, and she has a test teaching to do with Jack's class specifically. She gets to see him a lot. He gets to see her a lot. It's great. I love them. And so he's starting to catch on. He's starting to catch on to her. He can see straight through all of her bullshit, all of her lies. And she's starting to get more infuriated with this because she's like, I don't understand. I can't read you. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know who you want me to be. I can't be the Elsie you want. And that is infuriating to me. And he's like, and who would I want you to be? Why can't you just be yourself? Like, he's like, who would I want you to be? She's like, I don't know. You just hate me so much. Like, she's convinced that he hates her. And eventually he just goes and he tells her, like, just be honest. If you can't be honest out loud, at least let yourself think honestly. That's who I want you to be. That's what I want from you. It comes out later, he talks to her about the interview process because he's frustrated about it. Yeah, he told her that it was in bad faith, and she did not believe him and was very angry with him. And so she goes back and she talks to her mentor, Dr. L. I can't remember his full name, but he's a British guy, I think. But Dr. L, and he is infuriated to find out, well, he's really like mostly indifferent and crotchety, let's be fair, that Jack is on her interview committee and just tells her to pull out altogether. which is pretty sus. And she stands her ground, and she doesn't tell him to his face, but she stays in the running for this position. Her mentor pulls a little guilt trip on her, like, what, you don't trust me because I've gotten you to this point in your career, I've gotten you these jobs as an adjunct at these other places. And he's like, what, don't you trust me? And she's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, good. This goes on, and we find out with her early that she didn't get the job. And we find this out when she and Cece, her roommate, go and see 2001: A Space Odyssey, because Cece really loves art films and older films. Elsie cannot stand them, but Cece loves them to death. And Elsie can't bring herself to say that she hates them. She hates 2001: A Space Odyssey. She hates all of it. But they're out going to see this, and as they're leaving, she runs into George and Jack, and she assumes that they're on a date together. And Jack first sees her and says hi, and like calls attention to her, and Jack tells George, like, oh, this is Elsie, and Georgina is just like, oh, you're the school teacher. No. Was it library? No, you're the librarian, aren't you? And she's just like, that's right. That's her fake. That's her cover up. That was her fake. That's her fake persona that she had put on for Greg. And Jack had told George that she was a librarian because that's all he knew her by at that point in time, and hadn't really been able to update George on it. I can't exactly remember how George brings it up, but George basically spills beans and is just like, oh yeah, I got this job over at MIT and I gotta fill out the paperwork. I just put in the paperwork today. And that's when Elsie figures out, it clicks together, that she didn't get the job, George did. And she crumbles up and she closes off and she just bolts. She just bolts down the street as a storm is coming in. And she's just running, trying to get as far away as possible because she feels so humiliated by the entire moment. And Jack chasing after her, going, and he catches her, and she's like, why? Don't touch me, leave me alone. I think it's a very sweet moment. So Jack ends up taking her back to his place because it starts to snow, and he lives like right over here, and begrudgingly she goes with him. I think he picks her up or something. Anyways, that's very cute. She heads back with him, reminding herself the entire time that she hates him. But in the process of worrying whether or not he will kill her and put her in a jar and store her in a closet with all the other theorists that he's killed, she's given free rein because she ends up staying the night there with him because of the storm, and George takes Cece back to their apartment. But she ends up staying the night because the storm gets too much, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna get an Uber, and he's like, no, just stay here, just stay the night. I will go and change the bed sheets and everything, and you can just go sleep up there. I'm gonna sleep on the couch. And it's very cute. And so he gets her some clothes, and she goes up there and goes rests. And she's given free reign over in his entire room, and so she ends up like, ooh, I have free reign. I'm gonna check his nightstand just to make sure that there's nothing weird there. And she like expects a tentacle-shaped something, or like Atlas Shrugged, which would be horrible. But instead, she finds a picture of herself, a Polaroid from the Christmas party that she had attended with Jack and George. Not George, Greg. When she wakes up early in the morning, she goes downstairs to kind of explore, but she gets caught off guard when he wakes up, and they have this little bit of an exchange. What I said about George getting the job because she's your girlfriend or friend, because of some weird political intrigue, it's unfair of me. It's despicable, and I don't believe it. It was awful of me to Elsie. Hey, it's okay. You already apologized. He doesn't get it. I know, but of all the things that happened today, it seems like the shittiest. And I cannot control any of this. Not my career tanking, not whether or not I'm going to have health insurance or make rent, but I can control the way I react. So I'm sorry I said it. About George. About you. And people do it to me all the time. In the last year of my PhD, I got this stupid award. When I walked into the student lounge the following day, other students were saying that it was only because I was a woman, and I felt like total shit. I really didn't think they were right, but for a second I wasn't sure. For a second, they made me doubt myself, and I don't want to be like them. So it goes on, and he gets a little protective of her, and they end up sleeping on the couch together, and it's very cute. But I really liked that because it does really reflect on how women AFAB people are taught to fight each other for these positions, for this renown in this men's world. I'm going to come back to it later, but I really liked how it started to talk about these issues in academia, but also in the world that is these very patriarchal spaces. Everybody is harmed by patriarchy, everybody is, but it's understanding and deconstructing how even as an AFAB person, we can respond to other AFAB people in hostile ways because we've been taught that. When I was a kid, it was very girl versus girl. I don't know why, but it just was. It is just toxic, and now we're moving on with intersectional feminism. We're moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, continues. So they spent the night together doing nothing sexual, I assure you. So after they spend the first night together doing nothing sexual, I assure you, she returns to her mentor, who she tells him that she didn't get the job. She's like, Dr. L, I didn't get it. And when she tells him that George got the job, he is just like, well, maybe you can just go and get and request an appeal to the decision, because there's no way she, an experimentalist, got the job. She's like, no, that job was created for Georgina. I wasn't going to get the job. It just never was going to happen. He doesn't understand that. And she asks to push for a postdoc position, which would put her in research. And he pushes back against her and is just like, no, we've already talked about this. Nobody wants you on for a postdoc or a research position. And she's like, nobody? He's like, yes, nobody. But his excuse specifically is, Dr. L looks at me, alarmed for a split second, then sighs. We've been over this, Elsie. Well, he calls her Elise. So, we've been over this, Elise. Right. But we talked about theorists. Maybe some experimentalists might be interested in. Unfortunately, no. I asked widely, and I am very sorry, but no suitable physicist is interested in hiring you as a researcher. He says, and my stomach sinks even more. I lower my eyes to my jeans. God, I'm an idiot. A total fucking idiot. Elise, he continues, tone softer. I know how you feel. He circles his desk, coming to stand in front of me. Remember when you started your doctorate? How helpless you felt? How I guided you through developing your algorithms, publishing your manuscripts, making a name for yourself in the physics community? I can help you now. I think about the things he's done for me, all the things I owe him. I wonder where I'd be without him and come up empty. Do you trust me? It is gross. It is gross. Days later, she goes on her first date with Jack. Oh, I forgot to mention. Yeah, he asks her to go out with him because he wants to take care of her when she was with him last. I forgot about that. And so she goes on her first date, and she goes with Jake to a party where we see a gaggle of Jack's friends, and we see the protags from The Love Hypothesis, Adam and Olive. It's a nice little cute moment. The banter is really cute. All the friends are really nice, and it's really cute. So at this moment, where Olive and Elsie are having a moment. She talks about the big breakup that she had before she started fake dating, before she moved in with Cece. She had lived with somebody named JJ, who was the roommate of her old boyfriend. She moves in, and I can't remember if her and her old boyfriend stay together or not, but JJ's girlfriend breaks up with him, and she is just hanging out there, and eventually his ex-girlfriend shows back up and is going to grab some of her stuff, and they're eating dinner in the living room, very, very far away from each other, watching TV. And she comes in and she's like, gets super jealous of Elsie being there. And so after this point, he cracks this big idea of just like, oh, we should pretend to be dating each other. And so this snowballs into a big situation to where they're kissing, they're going, all of their friends think they're dating, everybody thinks that they're dating, and it feels like they're dating. She feels like they are. Granted, she doesn't really feel romantic towards him, but she wants to be the best version of Elsie that he wants for him. So it's toxic. And she ends up having sex with him, and it's never been, it doesn't do anything for her. And he ends up getting back together with his ex-girlfriend and just basically dumps her and wants her out of the house immediately. And she's thrown for a loop because it felt like they were actually dating, and she didn't understand how it could have gone from, how come I'm taking care of all your physical needs and we're like dating but fake, like we're dating but then you just kick me out. So she has a lot of hurt towards that, and she was explaining that whole situation to Olive, and she says that it hurt her so badly because she'd tried so hard. She'd given her all to be the perfect Elsie that he wanted, but he replies to this and says, you gave him a perfect version of you and he still didn't want you. And what you took away from that is that you needed to try harder. It is a heartbreaking little moment. It just hit a little bit too hard. It just hit me just a little bit too hard. The book goes on for about 100 more pages after this moment, but I wanted to stop here to give you the chance to read the ending for yourself. I really enjoyed it. There's not a third act breakup. There is a third act argument and some space needing to be made, but there is no third act breakup, which I really liked, because I'm not a fan of third act breakups, especially when it's something stupid like miscommunication. Just talk to each other. You're adults. Just talk. It's not that hard. I really liked some of the points that were brought up in the book, specifically focusing on what it's like to be living with the people-pleasing tendencies and what it's like to be living with diabetes, not a health insurance, and also the politics of academia and what it's like to be a woman in STEM and academia. For me, I really resonated with the people-pleasing aspects of Elsie and her struggles, because I am a recovering people-pleaser. Not to the extent of lying about myself, but I would compartmentalize portions of myself that I deemed that people would not like, would not enjoy, and I would make myself smaller because I can be very loud and I'd be too much. So I would make myself smaller for them, more palatable. Especially up until recently, I had discovered that I was really trying to gain favor with specific people, and in order to gain favor with them, I was really like cutting pieces of me off, and to the point to where when I came out of that and I was like started going to therapy, I was just like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what my gender is. I know the answers that are on paper, but like in here I didn't. Reading it, I felt seen, and I think that the depiction of a people pleaser in this book is done really well, especially those who have it pretty severely. I know it can seem a little bit over the top, but I believe that it is very accurate. I believe that it is to the point and there for a purpose, because I have known people who struggle with that specific type of people pleasing, that need to be the perfect whatever, to the point of lying and analyzing people and trimming down who they are and then making a whole new self for somebody different. So the diabetes was kind of big. I believe Elsie has type 1 diabetes. She wears a pod. She needs to regulate her insulin because her body cannot produce insulin. And she, because of this, and because of the fact that she's not on insurance and that she is not making enough money adjuncting or fake dating, she needs to ration her insulin, which I wanted to emphasize this point because I don't think a lot of people who don't have diabetes and don't have people in their lives that have diabetes understand that insulin is a very, very, very cheap drug to make. When the first patient received insulin in 1923, don't quote me exactly on the date, but it's about 100 years ago. And when that patient received it, he received it for $1. It was $1 his insulin shot. Now, insulin has gone up 300% in the US. Why? The companies that run and produce insulin, who now have control over these patents, are doing exactly what privatized medicine does. And so all these people in the US who don't have access to insurance or Medicaid even are paying $300 a vial. And there is some movement in the US. There was a bill that had started last year that was going to reduce it back down to $35. That bill has been changed a little bit to be specifically an insulin bill so that the cap would be $35. Currently, right now, I believe Medicaid has a cap of $35. I think this bill would make the cap to everybody. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't read the bill, but I'm going to link the bill down below. I'm also going to link down the Vox article and the GoodRx article down below as well that I went and I looked for some of this information from. But needless to say, this is a very real problem that people have in the US, and some people in the US who cannot afford it ration it, or they just go without it in totality. And that is horrible because this is an exceedingly cheap drug to create. Moving on, academic politics. So politics and academics, it's all there. In the author's note, Allie goes on and says that the incident in which there was a fake article sent to Scientific American in the story that was based off a real event. Well, I went and did some digging and I went and looked. Well, it turns out that this is like a problem, because I guess, so I was reading an NPR article, and in 2020 that they had found out that there's like a percentage of 28% of all articles in the biomedical field alone were false articles. They were just BS. Like, that's insane. And so they're working on trying to figure out more ways to combat this and to see and how to be able to test and flag whether or not an article is BS or not, because this has a lot of implications on the medical field and what is used to treat patients and what isn't, different ways to look at things. So this is very big, and I didn't realize how big it was. So I'd say if you want to read more, I put the NPR link down below. But yeah, it's very interesting. And mentors, very specifically, these tenured mentors, it's an issue all across the board, because my partner has had friends who have had mentors that screwed them over. And we see that in the book, where you find out some things about her mentor and how he's not a very savory character and a misogynist. And we see this often in STEM especially. And for me, for myself, I kind of just accepted that I wasn't going to be good at math or science, and it was just something that I really struggled with. And it got to a point to where I just didn't really fight to understand more when I was younger, especially when I lived at home, because my dad will say that women don't belong in STEM, that there's only so much women's minds can do. I grew up around that. I know what that feels like. And it is just infuriating. And I wished to see more of Dr. L get justice served to him. But that's just me. I'm going to link the sources below, and thank you for watching. And if you haven't already, if you would like to like and subscribe and ring the bell notification so that you can be notified when I post a new video. And also my socials are linked down below. And why don't you tell me what you're reading recently? Or if not, just do a little book stack emoji. So you guys have a good day and have a good week. Bye.